I'd like to ask Councillor Matthews if she would say the karakia.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Rebecca. There are no apologies other than the Mayor for the lateness. I would move the motion. Yeah, what are we doing? How are we doing? Hands? Oh, we got remotes, yeah. Yeah, Sarah's seconding it. Well. So that's all in favour. Yeah. Oh, okay. Are there any conflicts of interest declarations? Nope. We have some minutes. I'd like to move that the minutes be taken as being read. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Matthews. I'll put that. All in favour? Yeah, we're Yep, that was carried, wasn't it? Quite clearly and unanimously. Thank you. There are no items not on the agenda. We now have public participation, but just before we do, just a few little aspects of housekeeping. We'll take a break at 10:30 if needed. I'd just like to welcome everybody who is either in the room with our new officer Paloka. I'd like to welcome you and wish you the best for your tenure. Also, we have a number of our colleagues online. I believe that we have Councillor Pannett and Councillor, Liz Dawson. Liz Kelly, sorry. Yeah, I don't know where I get that from. And we have our public participants. So I'm just wondering if Thomas Davis, if he's online as yet. Okay, welcome Thomas, and you have 5 minutes to present to us on your traffic resolution on Amritsar Street. Welcome. Kia ora. Do we have him? Councillor Foon, welcome to the Regulatory Processes Committee as well. It's nice to have you with us. And Liz, nice to have you with us as well. And we don't seem to have Thomas. Oh, welcome Thomas, nice to see you again. No sound, you're muted. Thomas, you're muted, sorry. You should be good now. Welcome, Thomas. You have 5 minutes to talk to us on Amritsar Street, and welcome, nice to see you again. The what? Can you hear us now? Are you there? Have we got you all? And oh, good. We've got lots of nodding. We had a little technical hitch there, so apologies. Thomas, nice to see you again, and welcome. You have 5 minutes to talk to us on Amritsar Street. So thank you for coming in on Zoom, and welcome to the other participants, and also my council colleagues, Councillor Panic, Councillor Foon, and Liz Kelly. Welcome. Away you go, Thomas. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon and councillors, for the opportunity to speak to the Traffic Resolution 107 for Amritsar Street, to introduce no stopping at all times. My name is Thomas Davis. I've lived at 29 Amritsar Street for almost 24 years. I made the original request for action to the council to have yellow lines along the entire length of the S-bend in Amritsar Street, being from numbers 18 to 28. This is shown on a diagram on the last page of the officer's report with a dotted red line. Officers also have a single page handout, which I hope they've provided to you today as well. I'm not sure whether those councillors online have that handout as well or not. Have you got that, Simon?
Yes, we have.
Thanks very much. In recent years, with changes to the demographics of residents, particularly in the vicinity of the S-bend, there are cars parking outside numbers 22 and 28, so that cars coming up the street need to cross the centre line with no visibility of cars coming down and around the corner towards them. Previously, cars didn't park in this particular part of the street. I consulted with the residents living above and below the S-bend regarding my proposal, and had 23 supporters and 9 people opposing my proposal. While I only approached residents in the immediate vicinity, I noted there are 125 houses in the street, so approximately 100 households live below the S-bend. This is a one-way street. In fact, it's a dead end, so everybody below the S-bend has to drive up or walk up to exit the street. So that would be consistent with the officer's report, with an average daily traffic count of about 600 or so. Officers have proposed a limited parking restriction of only 11 metres. It will result in the loss of only one car park. Officers suggested it would be 2 car parks lost, but the reality is the minimum distance you're allowed to park a vehicle from a driveway is 1 metre. So the 9 metres of the 11 metres is reduced to 9 metres by that, and as a result would be inadequate for 2 cars with an average length of 5 metres. There is only ever 1 vehicle parked in this area now. While this restriction proposed by the officers will be a step in the right direction, the consequence will be that the car that regularly parks here will now park a few metres further down the street, still forcing cars travelling up the street across the white line with little or no visibility of cars coming down the hill. If you refer to the second photograph on the handout I provided, it shows you the sight lines for a car having to cross the white line at this location. So they would have to drive around what is the white car in that photograph. And as you can see, you have no idea what's going to be coming down the hill and around the corner. I do note that residents opposing the proposal have noted there have been no reported collisions on this corner. While this might be correct, good safety management requires risks to be identified and action taken to eliminate or mitigate the risk. In this instance, there are frequent near hits. These are unreported. This is sufficient basis for taking action now to eliminate or mitigate the risk. While I appreciate the officer's work on this issue, I would ask the committee to consider varying the officer's proposal and have the yellow line being continuous from the existing yellow lines at the bottom of the S-bend and running from numbers 28 to number 20, rather than only outside number 22. This would result in the loss of only 3 car parks and was supported by residents in the immediate vicinity, including numbers 28, 28A, 21, 23, 23A, 25, 27, 29, 31 and 33. So I think those that are generally affected by this restriction support the proposal. So if you would please consider that variation. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to the resolution.
Thanks, Thomas. Councillor Pannett has a question.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for coming in. I'm just wondering if you could let me know, has this issue really divided the street? Because I don't want to make it any worse. We obviously got quite a lot of submissions either way. We want to hopefully support good neighbourly relations. So your proposal, do you think that will cause any more dissent? Thank you.
Well, I mean, the street's a pretty quiet street in terms of that sort of stuff anyway. When I went round and knocked on every door, people were generally pretty receptive. Although there's a number of people opposed, that represents 4 households. So you've got multiple people from those households who have opposed the proposal. When I did knock on doors, there was only one person who I would describe as was aggressive towards me, and that's life. I'm not too bothered about that. And in fact, that person doesn't even park on the street. It's his neighbours that do. So I don't think if this was passed that it would actually cause any dissension in the street, really.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Councillor Pownett as well. Yeah, so that's our time, and yeah, good to see you again, Thomas.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Thank you. Welcome, Jonathan Harper, and you're going to talk to us on Chelmsford Street. Is he with us? Paging, not with us. Is Ian with us? We'll move on to Ian Armstrong. Do we have anybody on Zoom at the moment, or do we take a little pause, guys? Liz, do you mind shooting the queue? Would that be all right? Are you with us?
Not at all.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for fitting in with us. And you'd like to talk to us about Amritsar Street as well. So, yeah, there's continuity at least. Welcome.
Thank you. Unlike Mr. Davies, this is my first time to speak at something like this, so I'm rather nervous. Thank you for your time.
Don't be nervous. The regulatory processes meeting is just.
You can see my hand shaking. I won't.
Well, and we haven't started your 5 minutes yet, by the way.
Okay.
We just want you to feel comfortable, and you can see by the councillors around the table that this is a very accommodating.
Thank you.
Yeah, so relax and enjoy.
Okay. Thank you. Even though I understand, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Although I do not agree with the proposal in TR 10321, I am happy for it to proceed. Even though I understand that today's meeting cannot extend the yellow lines beyond the 11 metres, sorry for reading this, I'm nervous, the 11 metres proposed, I want to say that I would strongly oppose, and so would numerous neighbours, any extension, as this is not needed and oncoming cars can clearly be seen beyond this area as analysed by the Wellington City Council officers. I also want to say that speed and signage are the key issues here. Of the 15-kilometre signs that already exist, the S-bend coming down and up the road, one has been removed and the one coming down the road gets covered by vegetation. I would strongly recommend that the advisory safety signage is increased. I would like to commend the Wellington City Council's officers involved in this resolution for the logical and sensible approach they've taken to the RFA, which instigated this TR. I agree with the officers' recommendations, including the traffic engineering analysis that advises no extension of the 11 metres is required and that parked vehicles is an effective speed and safety management tool. I live on the S-bend and have to come in and out of my garage. When cars are parked there, this has stopped near misses as I back out or back in. So the cars stop the speeding vehicles. I disagree with Mr. Davies. I've lived on the street for 20 years. You will see under the official information request, there have been numerous other requests and TRs dating back to 2004 and 2005. Two cars have always been parked there. Speed. The official speed data released to me by OAA shows 41 Ks is the 85th percentile, with 35 Ks to 36 being the average, and that no one travels the 15K recommended, almost no one's speed limit. This is backed up anecdotally by posts made in the Kandala community Facebook page, where a member posted in October he was incredibly upset that he was told off by an elderly pedestrian about his high speed. He admitted he was speeding. You will see from my submission all the comments and that I added that was redacted in this TR posting, that overwhelmingly the comments said it was okay to speed 50 Ks down Amritza Street, full Ks ahead. Hey, Thomas Davies, they're all nutters down there. That was on my submission. Therefore, I ask the Wellington City Council make more visible and/or increase the advisory signage on the street. Removing car parks has seriously divided the street. Mr. Davies did not come knocking on any of our doors. Neighbours had to come and tell us, and we went down and knocked on his door. My son had 5 goes trying to sign it. Therefore, I ask that the speed signage be increased and no more removal of car parks. There is one inaccuracy in the report. Wellington City Council's officer's response to submission said there was one police reported at this accident at this location and a hit and run. In the submission, Waka Katahi's crash analysis system shows there has been no crashes on this section of Amritza Street. It shows in the last decade there was one crash, which was on the 26th of August 2020. It shows it was a collision with a parked vehicle 50 metres from the intersection. These yellow lines are 125 metres.
Hey Liz,
from the
sorry to interrupt you, but you've just got 30 seconds left, 40 seconds.
So
and
no crashes on the east end, and I would ask that speed signage be increased, and please don't provide any more division within their street by putting this back to further TR submissions, because it's not done fairly or transparently.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Are there any questions from councillors? No. So that's good. You've obviously communicated that to us exceptionally well. No, you don't have to apologise at all. You've done exceptionally well. You should be proud of yourself. So welcome any time.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Pannett has a question. Sorry, we'll allow that.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. That's very helpful. Liz, thank you for your submission, and you did really well being the first time. Just as per my question to your neighbour, I really don't want to sow any more dissent. So I'm just wondering, would a better way just be not to put this on the table and then we do some more community discussion with the street? Would that, do you think, be helpful?
I just think we need to heal, get this passed. It's 2 cars. I just don't want this carrying on. I don't think neighbours want it carrying on. People have been really embarrassed and have said so to me. You know, we had to go knocking. It's very easy. Please do ask for speed. You see my face, the Kandala community Facebook pages, those hundreds of comments, they said throw shit at that elderly pedestrian when the man, have you seen those submissions, or was that redacted from my... I put in the whole Facebook page, I think it was about the 5th of October. A man said, I'm sick of people asking me, you know, he was just incredulous that an elderly lady felt unsafe about his speed. And this is where people go, yeah, 60 Ks down that street.
Well, we will try and sort our signage out as a first. We have to do that.
Thank you. Let's try that. There has been no parked. There has been no accidents.
Thanks, Liz. Sorry, we do need to get going. But you've done really well. Don't feel nervous next time you come in at all, because you've handled yourself beautifully. Thank you. So we now have Bronwyn Newton. Are you there, Bronwyn? Are you with us? And Bronwyn's talking to us on the Urban Habitat Collective in relation to development contributions. You're there, Bronwyn?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I also have my friend and colleague, Jessie Matthews, with me, and we will both be talking to our presentation. Are we able to share screen with you?
Yeah, yes. You have 10 minutes to address us in being an organisation. So, yeah, welcome. And we look forward to listening to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Are you all able to see the presentation that's now up on the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Well, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. Oh, I'm not able to change the... Sorry about that. My name is Bronwyn Newton, and this is my co-founder of the Urban Habitat Collective, Jessie Matthews. My background is in law and property development and community projects, and Jessie is an architect who has a passion for people and place. We're here to ask the council to support our co-housing project in innovating housing in Wellington City by remitting our project development contributions. We are a group of 25 households. You can see them there, a likely looking bunch. We range in age from 1-year-old to 73 years old. We're first home buyers, families, retirees, and everyone in between. We are also New Zealand's first not-for-profit resident-led co-housing apartment project. What this means in reality is that we are working collaboratively and building our community and building our homes at the same time. These will be, as you see in the picture, 25 unit-titled apartments with shared gardens and common room, workshop, and roof deck. In 2018, we purchased a 1/4 acre section in Adelaide Road. You can see it here. It's the old Kia Ora Sheet Metals site. As you can see, we've done some demolition there. So we've been working on the project for almost 3.5 years, and we're fully subscribed. We have all our members. We have a resource consent and a cleared site. And now we're working on the final stages of our building consent and getting a construction contract and finance. And this is what we're playing for. These are our 2 buildings, a large building in the front that fronts onto Adelaide Road, and a smaller building in the back. It's our 1/4 acre dream. We believe that people need a built environment that supports rich, living and connected lives in an urban context. And we don't think that regular developments provide that. Our project will support people being committed to life in the city. These are forever homes where people will have their kids and grow old. As one of our elders said, you better make that lift big enough for a gurney or a coffin, because that's the only way I'm leaving. I'll now hand on over to Jessie to speak some more.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessie. Thank you very much for hearing us today. We really appreciate it. So just very briefly, what is resident-led development? Resident development is a large umbrella term, a kind of a catch-all for a range of housing development. Basically, it means that it's housing that is developed and designed by those who will actually live there in the future, rather than a third party like a developer. Future residents set their priorities, they provide the financing, and they take all the risks of the project. It's a development model that is really common in many places overseas, but we're only just seeing it getting off the ground in New Zealand, because we have a range of barriers and impediments that make it really difficult to do at this point, but we're trying our best to smooth the path and knock these barriers down. So when residents design and develop their own houses in the city, in the same way that they might in a greenfield section on the outskirts of the city, they have different priorities. And we think this results in better outcomes, both for the people involved, but for the wider city as a whole. So we make different decisions from what a speculative developer might. We tend to focus on long-term livability of the houses, of the homes, in terms of light and access and sun. They tend to have much more green spaces and green construction features with much higher insulation values than a developer would ever consider. We have resilient features like base isolation, and we're just generally much more energy efficient and resilient than a typical building. The process generates a really strong connection to the place and to the city and to the neighborhood in which it is, rather than other kinds of models. It creates resilient communities. It's an opportunity to really democratize the development of the inner city in a way that simply would not be available to people were it done through another developer. And these buildings tend to be accessible. They tend to be designed for the whole of life, for families, for people who have access and mobility issues. And it's really just a much better result for everyone. So just very briefly, this is the ground floor of our proposed development, and you can see how much green space we've left over, which will encourage birds and provide light and sun, not just to us, but to our neighbours as well. We have lots and lots of bike parks, as you can see, lots of bike storage and very few car parks. And this is really in support of the council's goals of making Adelaide Road into a multimodal corridor with a really good provision for public transport, cycling and walking infrastructure, etc., and really not adding much traffic demand in terms of car traffic to the already busy street. We really feel like that it's critical for the future of Wellington to really raise the bar on housing in the city. We need solid, real-world examples to become new benchmarks. And we feel as though that there's a risk that the poor design quality of many new apartment buildings in Wellington may end up destroying the market for it and really turning people off the idea of living in the city, which is something that we really want to encourage if we're going to meet our goals in terms of climate and transport and simply housing the number of people that we need to house over the next 50 years, as I'm sure you all know very well. Close to home, there's examples such as the Nightingale project in Melbourne, which has really set the standard over there for the quality of apartments in the city. And private developers have seen that, and they're now really scrambling to keep up and have really raised their own bar in terms of the quality of their provision. So our project, we think, is really strongly aligned with all the stated aims of the City Council in terms of let's keep Wellington moving, long-term plans, spatial plan, housing action plan. We are really doing exactly the type of housing that we need, exactly where we need it, but we're doing it in an innovative way. And as you know, the council has a role to facilitate new types of housing and housing innovation, and this is what we're here to ask you to do.
Yeah, so we're asking for your help in the remission of these development contributions. Obviously, the whole country has a housing problem, and if we keep doing the same thing, we're not going to solve that problem. Innovating is challenging and risky, and these are the challenges and risks that our group has taken on, and we just really want everybody to play their part, and we would like you to see that remitting these development contributions is the council's part. Innovation is difficult. There are lots of challenges, but we have created a model that we believe is going to be able to be followed by other groups, and that we could really lead the charge of other resident-led groups being able to do similar types of development in our city, and that's going to just increase the vibrancy and the commitment to a proper urban lifestyle. I don't think New Zealanders are really ready for a super urban lifestyle where they only have a small apartment and the rest of the time they're just out in public spaces. Actually, New Zealanders still want to be able to do messy jobs, to sit under a tree, to watch children play, to do all of those kind of things that they would do in a suburb. And in a project like that, like ours, they can do that in the city. We have so many challenges facing us at the moment: climate, housing, and transport. And there is no one solution to all of these things, but co-housing and this type of resident-led development is a small part in the wider housing and climate response ecosystem, and we would like WCC to play its part in that. And this is not unusual in the rest of the world. Many other cities support this type of housing and in really meaningful, practical ways, and they see the benefits of providing tangible support. Even Hamilton has set aside $2 million to support the initial acquisition of land for community land trusts, which is something that would be great if our council could look into as well. We are a bit behind the curve here, and at the moment the DC remission concept is really the only way for projects like ours to get tangible support from council. So fortunately in the policy it says that this committee has the full discretion to remit this amount, and it doesn't set a precedent. And we understand that we're doing something new. You don't want to open the floodgates to every developer or every other project claiming this same thing, but because this is not precedent setting, that would not be a problem. So we would really like you to take this opportunity to support innovative housing. It's not easy out here. Obviously the environment at the moment is really challenging, and we're determined and enthusiastic.
Sorry to interrupt you, Bronwyn. We're running out of time. I know that there's at least one councillor with some questions.
Okay, no problem. Well, just to wind up, here it is, our building, as Jessie says, exactly the type and quality of housing that we need, and we would like your help to get it off the ground.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill has a question for you.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. We'll count. Yeah, yeah. So you go first. Yeah, we'll allow that.
Kia ora, Bronwyn. Thank you. This is such an awesome project. Sorry. My question is: so development contributions are used to pay for infrastructure in the surrounding area for the life of a development, and I was just wondering, sorry, if you could tell us a little bit about the contribution of a space like this to the infrastructure and amenity on Adelaide Road, and what other benefits we might be seeing from that.
So, yeah, I'll let Jesse speak to that one. He's the design guy.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess there's a couple of responses there. The amount of green space that we are leaving over in the middle of the building, we think will be a benefit not just to us, but to all the buildings and the apartment buildings around us that will likely go up in due course. In terms of transport, we really feel as though we are doing much better than most in terms of minimizing our impact on traffic and congestion, and really supporting and getting the density in there that's required to support really high quality public transport and support high quality bike lanes up and down Adelaide Road, which is of course well overdue for some serious refurbishment to make it the beautiful boulevard and main transport artery that we need it to be.
I think we also just have to say, obviously, if there was another way of supporting resident-led developments and innovative housing projects, then we would certainly have taken it. But this is the only way that we can get council support in a tangible way. And over the 3.5 years of the project, we've had so much verbal support from both councillors and council staff, really saying, how much they think that the project will contribute to the city. What a great example of how density done well can be done. And unfortunately, the policies being the way that they are at the moment, this is the only option for getting some tangible support. So that's why we're going this route.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Matthews has a question also.
Kia ora, korua. I just want to make the point, Jesse Matthews is no relation to me, but he might be my brother from another mother. I don't know. The question I have is about water and what you have done in the design to the resilience of the building in terms of water sensitive design and water usage of the complex.
Yeah, really good question, thanks. So we are turning over about 40% of the site into permeable areas. So that'll reduce the stormwater flow into the city's stormwater system. The site was previously 100% permeable, so all the rain that falls on the roof of your building would go...
Non-permeable.
Non-permeable would go directly into the drains. We have a vision for water storage tanks, so about 30,000 litres in due course, which we'll install to the right-hand side of the small building that you're seeing there in the image. So that, of course, will increase the resilience and allow us to water the garden without using too much of the network supply.
Thank you both very much. Yeah, very, very exciting project. So thank you. Sorry, Iona, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate that, and thank you, Bronwyn and Jesse. Really exciting project, and I do want to support innovation. What I'm just grappling with, though, is that we have to have a good policy justification, because there will be other people that come along. So I'm just wondering, just on the water question, because it is about the growth-related component of providing more water and transport infrastructure. You've answered Rebecca's question, but presumably you're still having conventional flushable toilets and you will still need to use our wastewater systems.
Yes. Just to point out, you are actually in the process of updating the policy on development contributions. And so I guess that in doing that, you might want to consider that when you have not-for-profit resident-led projects that you want to encourage, that this might be a way that you recognise the other benefits that these projects contribute to the city in a different way from what developers do when they're walking off with large profits. So that would be why we would want the council to exercise its discretion in this way. And obviously, you know, the proviso in the current policy that this doesn't create a precedent means that no one can come after us and say, but you gave UHC that, why won't you give it to us? Because you can obviously point to the policy and say, you know, that's not precedent setting. And I have to say, there are no other projects like us in Wellington. There is not a flood. There's not a flood coming. We wish there was. We wish that was a real problem.
Yeah. So look, absolutely, I'm sympathetic, and in fact, it was me that put through the remission on Green Star buildings, and I'm sorry that hasn't worked for you in this case. I need to talk to the Green Building Council. But I guess my point is that it's still requiring some expense from the ratepayer. So yeah, I just wanted to double check. Is there still any potential to go further on reducing reliance on a centralised three water system, or is it really you're nearly ready to build? And
well, our understanding is that if there is a municipal sewer system available, the building code requires you to connect to it. We did look into composting toilets and grey water systems and all these sort of things. But our current building code does not really support that very, very easily. So our hands were pretty much tied in that respect. We have also considered sewage detention mainly for resilience purposes. With construction costs going the way they are, that was a sort of an optional extra which we had to delete from the project, unfortunately. We've seen construction costs inflate by about 30% over the past year, which is really, really threatening the financial viability of the project. So we are really scraping for every bit of help that we can get in this regard.
And just as one last question, Simon, if I'm allowed, is just about how difficult is it for developments like this to go even higher in terms of the home star? I know you've worked really hard to get to nearly 6. Is it practicable to go to 8?
Yeah, well, our understanding from talking to our consultants is that we are sort of equivalent to about Homestar 7 or 8 level. Earlier on in the project, we decided not to go down the formal Homestar accreditation process, mainly because Homestar is usually used as a marketing tool for protected purchases, which is really, really good, and I really support the use of it. But for us, we know what we're doing. We know how the quality of the building and the efficiency of the building, and we didn't see the extra cost and time involved in going through the accreditation process as adding any value to us. So we just focused on doing things right, rather than sort of proving that we're doing them right through an accreditation such as Homestar. But we are well above building code in terms of insulation levels. We have heat recovery systems, really efficient envelope, efficient glazing, etc., etc.
And really good acoustic, because when you know and like your neighbours, you don't want to be irritated by whatever they're doing above your head.
Thank you both very much, and Councillor Pannett, thank you. I did allow that. You didn't give me much choice, but we're good for time at the moment. We do have Michael Turnbull, who's going to talk to us about the traffic resolution on Garden Road. So welcome, Michael. You there?
Yeah, kia ora koutou, Council. Imihana, it's lovely to be here today. I've talked here in very different capacities before, but just excited to talk here as a resident of Garden Road on the traffic proposal that's been put forward.
Just before we kick you off, don't forget that you've got 5 minutes, and if you want questions, just leave a little bit of time.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you. I'll be fairly brief, and just so we can kind of have some good questions if the councillors have some. Look, I think I understand the issues with road usage on Garden Road. That's something that's been prevalent for people who live on Garden Road for a long time now. I'm just concerned that the current proposal put forward, I don't think addresses or adequately solves some of those concerns. The proposal talks about wanting to leave space for drivers up and down Garden Road, particularly that section between the outlined from I can't see the exact numbers now, but within the certain section outlined. The issue is that I think by removing these parking sections and then putting broken yellow lines along there, you're going to make parking so much harder for residents of Garden Road. It's going to be significantly impactful to those residents within that area. I'm also considerably concerned because although there's yellow broken lines on the northern side of the road, on the southern side of the road, there's still going to be left a gap. I'm concerned that putting the broken yellow lines on the northern side of the road is actually going to cause more people to park up on the southern side where there won't be broken yellow lines now. This seems kind of counterintuitive. I think it's just going to cause more issues for pedestrians trying to walk up and down Garden Road, particularly those with wheelchairs or with mobility issues. I don't think it's actually going to help those groups that the council is attempting to support here. I'm also worried that it's actually going to it's just going to really affect those residents who need to park nearby to access their cars. You know, as at present, there isn't enough parks on Garden Road. By removing this section, it's probably going to force these residents to park down Glenmore Street, push further up. We already see cars parking on not actual parks around the rest of the street. I'm just worried that that's going to get worse and that you're going to put more stresses on parking. People just aren't going to be able to access getting to their houses if they have mobility issues, and that this isn't actually going to help with some of the traffic concerns going up and down Garden Road. But yeah, I mean, I'll take the proposal as read and just leave some proper time for questions if the council has any, and if not, I'm happy to talk a little bit more on some of my points.
Do we have any questions? No. Oh yeah, Councillor Condi, Jenny, go for it.
Thanks for coming in today. Just wanted to follow up on your comment about having the parking, preferring to have the parking not at the footpath, because it is generally our policy if we're putting parking on one side of the road and there is a footpath only on one side of the road that we put the parking where the footpath is, because obviously that means that people can more safely get out of their car and onto the footpath. So we kind of have a generic policy that we would try and put the parking on the footpath side of the road. But do you want to talk about, so what your concern is that you think people are then going to park on the footpath, or what are your concerns there?
Yeah, so I mean, thank you for that. And it's good to know a little bit more about that generic policy. I think because in the proposal, there's no outlined actual parking made on that side of the road. There is just a gap in the broken yellow lines. Whereas, you know, on the northern side, we actually have legitimate, you know, parking outlined. I understand that, but within the proposal, there's nowhere where it talks about actually creating that area for parking. And what tends to be the case now is because it's not up against an embankment, it's up against a pavement, and people, because Garden Road is so narrow, want to avoid being on the road, they tend to park on the pavement. So what I'm worried about is that by removing the legitimate parking areas and leaving a gap in the broken yellow lines on the other side of the road, those cars are actually going to continue to park up on the pavement, which further restricts pedestrians coming up and down. If the proposal were to outline actually including like legitimate parking on that side of the road, I think that would be really beneficial. I think that the current space within the broken yellow lines that is left over for that isn't probably enough. It would probably need to be extended. But yeah, there's nothing in the proposal at present that talks about actually installing, you know, legitimate parking areas on the southern side of the road.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Councillor Condi, also. No, I don't think Councillor O'Neill has a question. Yeah, thank you again, and to all our submitters this morning. We got there in easy time. Malcolm Sparrow would be absolutely proud of us all. And we also had a couple of new submitters as well, which was great. I think we'll break for morning tea now, if that's okay, and we'll come back at past. Yeah, so thank you. on our traffic resolutions. So thanks for coming along, Brad.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. So in front of you today is the paper on the latest traffic resolutions. I believe there's 21 as opposed to the 22 that's on the paper originally. We're actually bringing 21 traffic resolutions to you today. There was one for Silver Birch Grove, which we've pulled. And so these have all been consulted on, and the council officers are recommending that these traffic resolutions be approved by the council.
Thanks, Brad. Do we have an opportunity for questions? Is that something that we should be doing? Yeah, Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, Brad. I just wondered if we were able to respond to a myriad of concerns around the Garden Road traffic resolution, or maybe if you could walk us through our choices in terms of getting cars off the footpath, but also, historical conflict there.
There should be Sun Tech on the Zoom call who could field that question. Sun, are you there?
Welcome, Sun.
Morning, Chair, Deputy Mayor and councillors. Garden Road has been a long sort of ongoing issues where cars are parking on bands and narrow sections of road, and with car ownership not dropping, there's an increased occupation of car parking over the footpath. In this particular case, what we found was that even though it's a straight section of road, cars were parking on the embankment side plus on to the footpath, just to allow enough room for a larger vehicle to get through. What we found was we are able to cut back on the embankment and allow parking on both sides and still allow a larger vehicle to get through. So we have looked at both sides. What we found that in our current guidelines or process is to allow parking on the footpath, because what we find is that when people have children or people they are at risk, they are normally dropped off on the footpath side where they can stand away from traffic flows, and that is a safer arrangement than parking on the embankment side when you open the door, bringing out children. You are exposing them to a live traffic lane. So as a result, we have concluded that parking adjacent to the footpath is a safer option than onto the embankment side. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Pannett, sorry. And then
Thanks, Councillor Wolf.
Condi.
So I've got two questions. Just with the public participation from Kandala. So your officer advice would be that we just go ahead with that traffic resolution, and then maybe it's a question for the ward councillors whether there can be some community healing if necessary. It just sounds quite divisive. So that was my first question.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful to get the community to sort of come to some consensus about where they should be parking and where broken yellow lines should be, because as what we find in a lot of areas is that there are a lot more cars on the road, and unfortunately people are now parking on areas where it's unsafe for others to use the road. And I think bringing the community together will come up with a plan that would suit the needs both on safety grounds, accessibility grounds, and also some parking needs that they have. Thanks.
If I could just,
Okay,
yeah, sorry, Councillor Pannett, have you something else to?
I had one other question, but if you want to just continue on with that one, of course.
Oh yeah, I actually did, if that's okay. Can we ensure that the signage and the speed limit, visibility, the signage is improved up there, because apparently it isn't currently. It's one of the signs is hidden by foliage. That would be something that would be helpful. Yeah, as one of our submitters mentioned.
Yeah, we'll do a check today or this week to ensure that, look, if we need to add any more signs to advise people of the safe speed to go around the double bend, and so yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Soon.
Thanks. Just my other question soon was about the kohanga reo. Is that primarily to serve the local area, or do tamariki come from all over the city?
I'm not clear about the question, Councillor Pennant.
Well,
I can probably answer this, as this kohanga reo is in my street, and
yes.
it does cover. I know that children are coming from other areas, for example, Johnsonville and things like that. So it's definitely not. There wouldn't be that many tamariki Māori in Ngaio at the moment, so many of the children will be travelling.
Okay, thanks for that. So I guess just my following question from that is, so you'll probably know that I do want to denormalise parents always driving, if at all possible. And so I guess I just get these, it's this sort of cumulative policy of always allowing for car parking. Can you just remind me if our parking policy has anything to say about parental drop-offs outside, kohanga reo or early childcare centres or primary schools?
Councillor Pennant, I think the parking policy always put pedestrians above cars. The thing we are trying to do is to make it safe to sort of arrive at childcare center or educational center now. In situations like this, we try to improve the crossing points where they can safely cross, but in our daily dealings, there will be always cars and that the parents use to drop off their children. We would need to make sure that when the cars are being used, they do not affect the safety of people who choose to walk or people who choose to come to that place.
Okay, kia ora, thanks for that.
Thanks.
Just on that, I think, Tarakaka Street, is that right? I think we should have double yellow lines on both sides of the street. Councillor Matthews, would you? Just joking, because I know that someone lives in that street.
You just stop it.
You don't have to answer that. Brad, you don't need to go there.
It needs to be reconsulted.
I got the look. Anyhow, we really should be moving on. Are there any other questions, Councillor Condi?
Thank you. I had a question about the change that's being made on Victoria Street, where a current metered parking space is being turned into an access for Wellington Water vehicles. And I was just wondering whether Wellington Water are going to compensate us for the lost revenue. Is there a revenue arrangement there?
There's none, Councillor Condi. The reason why we are providing something that's on the street is because they're currently parking over the pedestrian area. And if we don't want trucks to be damaging the nice upgraded area that we have done in the past. So it's mainly moving them onto a road rather than on the pedestrian area.
All right, good, thank you. I also had a question about the Shotter Street. One of the submitters on Shotter Street came back and said that they have similar issues on the intersection of Shotter and Vivier Street. Did we look at that intersection, or can we put that on the work program to look at going forward?
We did go back to the submitters and says we can't put in what they have requested with mirrors and more broken yellow lines, but we definitely look at how we can improve the sight line for that intersection. Because any mirrors do give a distortion of what you're seeing. So
yes, I know that we don't do mirrors. I was thinking more about the broken yellow lines around the intersection.
Yeah, we'll look at it as part of another exercise, because this current TRs we can't extend on it.
Yes, no, I was basically asking whether we can essentially start another TR process looking at whether broken yellow lines around that intersection are needed.
Yes. We'll look into it. Thanks.
Thank you. And then my last one was on Garden Road again, where one of our submitters was asking about, are we going to actually be painting marked parking bays where the parking is available, or are we only proposing to go and paint broken yellow lines?
Currently, what we do is tend to set the limit where they can start parking with L bars rather than individual spaces, because sometimes when we mark individual spaces, it actually takes longer space. So we tend to just show where they can start parking with L bars, so we can do that.
So the proposal is that we'll put some broken yellow lines in, and where there is parking permitted, we'll put L bars so that you can see where it starts and stops. Thank you.
Yes, so it's clearer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of officers? Councillor Condi, I think it's for you to put this on the table properly.
Excellent. Always one of my favourite jobs, to be happy to move this paper. I think I just want to talk quickly about a few of the traffic resolutions here. I'll start with the one on Tawa Street, because that's right next to my train station this morning, which was at Redwood. And, you know, you'll have seen we got kind of mixed feedback from people about that one, although we got lots of really strong feedback from Greater Wellington and Transdev and, you know, the train safe people. But I was actually walking to catch my train this morning, and the exact thing happened. A car stopped to turn right into the parking lot, and there was traffic coming along, and somebody got stuck behind them, sitting on the train tracks. And that's happened to me before, and it is terrifying. And so the person who was stuck on the train tracks was on the horn, and it was all just a bit stressful. So I think that the idea of trying to say no right turn, it's really not far to go up and around that little roundabout. It will make that little roundabout a bit busier, but I think the safety benefits are huge. I just want to acknowledge the staff. We had a few comments about making sure the signage was really clear, and thank the staff for considering those suggestions, and just acknowledge that we'll monitor this to see how it goes. But I think it's an excellent step forward for safety, because having been the car sitting behind somebody who didn't have their indicator on, you enter and you don't realise they're going to turn, and they stop, and you're on the train tracks, and that is really not a comfortable feeling. So thank you for that. I also wanted to say it was exciting to see another painted bus box traffic resolution come to us. We'd had a little dearth of those, so I was so excited to see another one come. You know, whatever we can do to kind of help our friends at Greater Wellington and Metlink so that their buses can get in and out of the curb, and accessible access on and off is great. So it was so great to see that again. I just wanted to acknowledge Amritsar Street and say, you know, obviously this is a challenging issue, but I always kind of feel like if we end up with a bunch of people asking for more broken yellow lines and a bunch of other people asking for less, that we probably have got it about right. And I really appreciate the staff's work that you've done to kind of look at where the broken yellow lines are really necessary for visibility versus where they actually we have enough visibility without them. So I appreciate the work that went into that. And finally, I just wanted to speak quickly to Garden Road and just acknowledge the people on Garden Road that this is the 4th traffic resolution that they've had to deal with in 6 years. This is obviously a street that's under a lot of pressure. We know that I think there's a lot of commuter traffic that come in and park in this area and then come into the city. It's obviously a challenging spot for residents, and we want to acknowledge that. I still think that we should support this traffic resolution because it's important that we make sure emergency vehicles can access the street, but I really want to acknowledge the challenges that residents of Garden Road are facing, and so we've included this number 4 in the substantive, which is just noting that we recommend that Garden Road's a high priority for an area-based parking review and possible new residents parking scheme. And that's work that I know Brad and his team are undertaking, looking at how we'll implement those new schemes and operationalise them. But just to acknowledge that this is clearly a hotspot that are experiencing a lot of issues. That's it from me. Who would like to second?
Councillor Matthews actually got her hand in well before anybody else.
I was so excited that I put my hand up while you were speaking, Councillor Condi, because I always feel a bit sad when we have a regs meeting that we don't have traffic resolutions at. It's not the full emotional experience. Just briefly, Garden Road, absolutely, Northland, we do need residents parking there. Northland and Wadestown are the 2 suburbs, I think, in our ward. Councillor Wolf, that we really do need those things to be happening as a matter of urgency, and just every city councillor's dream to have a traffic resolution in my street. The excitement when I read that, we actually have 2 early childhood facilities on Tarakaka Street, and the kohanga reo at the end of the road. I think it's a really good idea to have, as I say, those tamariki will be coming from quite a way over the city, and that often with people, that there is, while it's great we have mode shift, often dropping children off into early childhood centres is one of those times in life where we may be a bit more car dependent than other times, and I know that was the case for me. So yes, happy to support all of these. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Matthews. I think Councillor O'Neill was next.
Thank you. I just have a point to the mover of this paper, which is Traffic Resolution TR3521 Silver Birch Grove, Churton Park. And I just wanted to know the officer's recommendation here is to not recommend that. And I wanted to understand, if that's being laid on the table or not. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. Deputy Mayor Free will go, and then Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a need to say too much, but I think it's nice when submitters acknowledge the work that's been done by our officers, and that happened today, and the knowing that they do go out there and they measure things and they really think about, the concerns of residents and weigh it all up. Safety obviously is a priority, but just knowing they're doing that work and it's being seen by the community and acknowledge that they're doing a thorough job. So, I'd like to add my thanks to theirs. And I'm also just really pleased, and again, it is about staff listening to us over a period of time, that we're getting a little bit more motorbike parking, because again, that's been something that we've signalled as a council. Motorbikes don't use as many resources as a car. They do get people around and they take a lot less space to park. So when we're looking at a space-constrained city, this is quite a good move, and it's been picked up and acted on by our staff. So again, thanks from me, and I'll be supporting all of these.
Councillor Bennett, thank you. Deputy Mayor Free.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Look, just really briefly, yes, thank you to the staff. You've obviously done a lot of very conscientious work, so that's much appreciated. Just 2 points that I felt a bit glum when reading some of the public participation. Still the very strong focus on parking. So obviously we have some work to do in terms of providing alternatives and some culture change for as we transform the city. And I guess just my point about the childcare centre. Look, I appreciate it's difficult, and again, we're in a time of transition. But I think it's really important that as much as possible, we are designing so that people can easily get places in a sustainable way, and that we get our tamariki from a very early age going, yep, I'm walking, I'm scootering, I'm taking the bus, I'm taking the train, because it's just what we're going to have to do as we rapidly decarbonise particularly over the next 8 years. But I get that we are in a time of transition, and it is a bit tricky at the moment. So hopefully people can make it up in other ways in terms of our joint commitment to sustainability. But I do just worry a bit, because it is a bit these piecemeal kind of recommendations which come and then they end up with quite a significant impact. So just keeping an eye on that. But look, all good, and I'll vote for everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Anybody else wish to speak? I'll just make a couple of comments. I'm really pleased with what's going on in Northland. I was pleased with the Riggy as well, that's come up, because that's an extremely dangerous little piece of road down there. So thank officers for their initiative and the work that has been done. Councillor Condi, if you could.
Very quickly. Just to address the silver birch, so there was just some information I received this morning that led me to think it would be useful for us to just defer the silver birch grove until the next meeting, so that we can actually have a chance for everybody to catch up on that information, rather than trying to scramble to deal with it this morning. So it's just that it's a little bit more complex, and I think let's defer it to the next meeting. So that's what's happening with that one. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for mentioning the motorbikes. I felt the same way when I was reading through them and seeing that it's such a great way of, when we've got a space that's too small for a car. That we're thinking about how we can use that space differently in the city. So it's fantastic to see that. And I was thinking back to the traffic resolution we had up in Kelburn, which was the first one where we didn't have enough room for a whole car, and so we painted a triangle on the road to see if that would work for motorbike parking. So it is exciting to kind of see these innovations then start to spread across the city. I also just wanted to thank all the staff who respond to all the submissions, because I do read all the responses, and I think they're always so constructive, and it really, I think, is important for our submitters to feel like they've been heard and they understand what the process is. So those responses are so critical, and I really appreciate them. And I just want to acknowledge, think that Brad's going to do a little bit more work at looking at how we can, sometimes we get people coming back saying, oh, but what about this pothole? While I'm here telling you about this traffic resolution, can we fix this pothole? And just looking at how we can kind of streamline that for people so that they don't then have to go to somewhere else to go and report that. So I think, but it's a really, this part of the traffic resolutions process with submitters is a real customer service facing, community facing thing, and I want to appreciate and thank you for the work that you do to make our submitters feel like they've been heard and understand how the process works.
Thanks, Councillor Condi. Does anybody wish to take any of these separately, and are we all in agreement as to the amendments now becoming the substantive? Yeah, I think we are by leave of the meeting. So we can just put this straight to the vote. Yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure that those people on Zoom can see what we're... They're all read out, okay. I know that if Councillor Calvert was here, we would have or Councillor Young, we'd have a difficulty with that. Yeah, so I'm putting the traffic resolutions, those in favour with the green, and those against with the red. Look at that. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll now move on. The development contribution. Liam, are you... Oh, they might be online. They might be online. Yeah. For those of you who are online on Zoom just watching, we're just going to take a brief break while we just sort out our technical bits with getting officers in the right place. I don't think the officers sort of thought that we would move that all as one. I think that's the first time we've not had an issue with traffic. A lot of we've separated at least some of them most of the time. Yeah, no, we're fine. I think we're right on time, aren't we? Okay, Liam, do you and your team, Nicole and Mark, under the mask, welcome. All three of you, welcome. Who would like to talk to us?
Well, look, I'll introduce, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. I think we haven't really rehearsed anything as such. That was a very interesting and quite exciting submission from the applicant. This is a remission, I think, for $54,000. There's obviously been discussion around the table in terms of where this sits and the strategic direction of the city, and we all understand and, of course, encourage housing diversity, and in particular, these new and exciting and innovative ways of how housing can be delivered, and it's an important benchmark for the city that we certainly have issued the resource consent, and now they're getting very close to develop, so that is exciting. However, based on the current policy settings, officers aren't able to recommend support. Council are obviously very aware that we are currently consulting on the development contributions policy. It is just a high-level update. Officers would have advised, and you'll be familiar, that our next LTP will be growth-related and a more deeper review of our DCs will occur. So we're happy to offer any questions any answers to questions you have regarding the application. And Nicola here has processed the remission, and Mark is Nicola's manager. Thank you.
So do we take the report as read, or would you like Nicole?
So, yeah.
Okay, we'll open to questions then by the chair. Yeah.
Are there questions? Okay, yeah, go for it, Councillor
So
Conley.
I've got one which you may not be able to answer, but I was just really surprised at how expensive the Green Star certification process was, and whether is that unusually expensive, and is that different to like the Home Star, because they talked about getting Home Star certified, and is that comparable? Is it cheaper to do Home Star? I was just I was just surprised how expensive it was, and then wondering if there are other ways we can accommodate that.
I don't think either of us are certain. You can see that from our responses. But what I would say to that is that certainly has been my understanding, that it is quite expensive. I think we do, under our policy, allow people to submit like an equivalent of Green Star, so they may not actually use the Green Star accreditation, but if someone can submit something which is equivalent to a Green Star kind of report, we will consider that, and that is often a lot cheaper. So that's at the appropriate time when our DC policy is reviewed in full. That's certainly something that I think we could and should consider to allow those broader options. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Pennant would like to ask a question. Just before she does, we do have the Mayor has joined us for the meeting as well, just to welcome you, Andy.
Thanks, Simon, and good timing, Andy. I'm sure you'll be very interested in this issue. I was just interested in the comments from submitters that the building code was not really helping them in doing, innovative things like composting toilets to reduce reliance on wastewater systems. Is that your view?
Again, I don't have a deep knowledge of this. It's probably a technical question that I would direct to some of our technical officers in the BCC team. Although certainly the building code is quite, and the Building Act and the standards are quite prescriptive, particularly in areas which are going to be sewered. There would be, my understanding is, to be fairly limited opportunities to not use the sewage system. But it's more broadly a central government type issue rather than something that we control ourselves. We're broadly in the position of I suppose enforcing the standards and requiring the standards set out in the Building Act and the accompanying standards, yeah.
Okay. And then a few of us have been working on an amendment because we are sympathetic about this being an exceptional development, the first of its type. So I looked carefully at the policy. Would you say that the first co-housing development is an exceptional case?
I think that's difficult for officers to answer, given.
Oh, no. I mean, it is a genuine question. We do have discretion, so I just wondered if it is the first co-housing development we've done.
Liam, would you like to?
Exceptional. I think from a committee point of view, that's for the committee to decide. I think it is the first in Wellington.
And just the last question, Liam, just in terms of the DCs, what proportion is water and then what proportion is transport? Because I get that they're trying to ease the burden on the transport network, but the water one's just a little bit more complex.
Sorry, I wouldn't be able to give you the exact figure, but transport and water is a high percentage. It would be the two main ones. So I'd probably say a guesstimate water would probably be about 50 to 60%.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Free.
Apologies if I missed this one when I was out, but I've been on regs for a while and we haven't made terribly many exceptions. Can you outline for me some of the ones that we have done remissions, some of the situations in which we have done remissions previously?
We did one in February. We gave a partial remission. That was due to officer error. And then I think we've done about 10, so we've remitted about 10 before that.
Over what time frame would that be?
Since it's probably the life of the DC policy, so since 2005.
Since 2005, we've done about 10.
10 full remissions or partial remissions. We don't, I can't tell you the exact number, sorry, but there's probably only been about 20 or 30, maybe 30 remission requests.
Okay, that's useful. Thank you.
Excuse me, through you, Chair. Can I just add to that some context, because most of the remission applications have come through when we have, or when the committee's accepted a remission, it is actually usually through a remission of stormwater from the impermeable surface area and credits. So it's actually implementing part of the policy, and a lot of those really should have been assessed differently in the first place. They weren't remission applications that were, I guess, like for like with this application. And I believe the nature of the question would relate to where there's other, I guess, social good aspects to the remission, in which case there really hasn't been any remissions accepted on that basis. There've only been two that I can remember since the inception of the policy that have looked at this type of thing. One was a development on Victoria Street Apartments behind St. Peter's Church there, where they had a common green space that they were putting in there, which was open to the public, and that common green space, I think that was declined for remission because it still didn't relate to the council's costs and recovering council's costs. It was something that the developers put in there. And the other one was the Children's Hospital. Came through with an initial application for a remission, and the council was all set to actually grant they were going to grant the equivalent amount of the development contributions for the Children's Hospital, but then it came through that the actual Children's Hospital didn't require development contributions because it was effectively a government development, so it didn't apply in that instance anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Liz Kelly has a question of officers.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Through you, if I could ask the officers, can you just confirm for me that the development contribution in Wellington City Council is not only for the infrastructure, as in water pipes and those sort of things, but also includes other services that a development where you've got more people in the city would use the other services that council provide, like the pools, the parks, the reserves, the libraries, all of those other facilities, the footpaths. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, I can answer that. Yes, that is correct. So there is community infrastructure as well as the direct hard council infrastructure in terms of Three Waters and roading that's in the calculations that these DCs do recover.
So when we ask for development contribution, that covers all of what I just said?
That's correct. That's correct. So it covers the cost to the council. Currently, we've got about $300 million worth of debt currently and forecast in the next 10 years of the LTP for growth infrastructure. So far, we have recovered about 57 million of that 300, and that's to cover all of those community facilities as well as the Three Waters and transport.
Thank you. So, if you could confirm then that this is a way for council to reduce the rate debt to everybody, where everybody in the city is paying for these services that council needs to provide, so that we do have a healthy, workable city.
Yes, there's a legislative framework of how we fund council's services and infrastructure, and we have to go through that. And the way that happens for development contributions is you have to consider who benefits from the infrastructure and therefore who should pay. And so that's how the development contributions policy came into being. So the people living in the development or the development itself effectively benefits from the extra capacity of the infrastructure that we put in, and therefore the development contributions policy is a way of making them pay for it. If they didn't pay for it, then that debt stays on the council's books. It's not budgeted to stay there. It's budgeted to be repaid, and it would stay there, and therefore the interest on that debt would then annually be accruing to all the rest of the ratepayers who aren't directly benefiting from that development.
And just one more question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Can you advise, has there ever been has anybody ever asked before for a development contribution remission?
Yes, they have. I think Nicole answered that. I think there was 20 or 30 applications before. As the Deputy Mayor rightly said, there's hardly been any acceptance of those. A lot of those were actually a calculation for a reduction in stormwater. So it was a change in the impermeable surface area of the site. So where the building had changed and one had been demolished and a new one had been set up. It should have already been calculated and removed and shouldn't have gone through the remissions process.
I did hear her say that, so it was an error on council's part.
There have been other applications that have all been turned down where people believe their use of the development is different to the averages that are in the actual policy. But the policy really states the highest use in the next 10 years. And so those have been unsuccessful.
Hey, thank you very much. Kia ora.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Marty. We have Councillor Foon ready for a question as well. Welcome, Laurie, to the best committee at council. Go for it.
Kia ora, Councillor Wolf. Yes, I'm always envious of this committee and its speed, although today might not be living up to its legacy. My question is around the first home rates remission. Can you just explain a little bit about that, Marty, and just who pays for the rates remission in the end? And have you got any data on how that's going at the moment and what it's costing per annum?
We have provided that reasonably regularly, but I don't have the current numbers. There aren't a lot. Who pays for that? It's effectively any remission in rates is substituted to the rest of the ratepayers. So whilst the average rates remains the same, the more remissions you give, the more it displaces that amount remitted onto other ratepayers. And so the rest of the ratepayers who don't get the remission pay slightly more than the average rates increase. There hasn't been a lot in terms of new build remissions. Some of it is the qualification criteria that's set out in the government, because we're just leveraging off the government's new build grant funding regime. But yeah, we can get those details to you.
It's all right. I just wanted to highlight, that we've got other systems. One more question. What percentage of the development contributions roughly goes to the community aspects? Is it roughly 5, 10, 30? I know it's deep in our emails, Marty. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's a pretty small number because of the cost of most of the bulk of the other infrastructure.
Yeah, but that's what I need. That's fine.
Yeah, it's only the growth component. Remember, it's not the total component of the cost of the infrastructure. It's only the extra capacity for growth in the development. I think it's probably worth noting as well that in this particular application, that because it was a commercial site, there's been a significant credit on that site, which has reduced the actual application down to I think it's just over nearly $55,000. So with 25 residential units, that's just over $2,000 a unit. Whereas you'll note from our recent workshops that the actual development contributions on a brand new unit on a greenfield site would at minimum be 5,000 sort of thing. So there's been some significant credits on that site, which will help and reduce any impost on that development.
Thanks, Marty. Deputy Mayor Free. Thanks, Councillor Fern.
I guess just one of the things that the points that they're making in their favour is that they have got a reasonable percentage of green space. So my question would be, has that been already accounted for in the stormwater assessment or in other assessments that have been done to arrive at the 50-odd thousand figure? Or is that just a standard amount of green space?
So I'll attempt to answer that, and maybe Nicole can add further. But so the development contributions for stormwater are based on the infrastructure again. So and the green space is really where we are charging for council's planned green space. That's what the development contribution contributes to. So any green space offered within the development isn't within the council plans. There's therefore no cost to council, and therefore we're not recovering any funds for that particular green space, because it's effectively a private green space for the development.
I was thinking about permeability and Nicole.
So we would only charge stormwater on the building's footprint. So if with the open space, we wouldn't have charged stormwater on that. Is it? Yeah.
Done on a meterage, square metre of coverage sort of basis.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been adequately accounted for in the sums that we've got in front of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Free. Mayor Foster.
Yeah, look, thanks. I'm just going back, trying to think in history, and probably it's a Marty question. Some of those where we did have, I'm not sure it was the remissions, but so much as agreements which we had. The two that I can recall were the two universities, where where they had to go through quite a process to identify how their demand was different to the demand we originally assessed. Is that correct? My memory correct on that?
That's correct. So part of the policy allows for a private development agreement, and which both universities had. They had slightly different ones. And again, that remission was really based on engineering. So where they could show their reduction in demand for the infrastructure based on their water, not specific. Well,
I think it was mostly
based on water
consumption
and transport. There was a separate agreement, and a remission was put in place in that phase, and that was really because it was sort of more of a commercial site. It wasn't straight out equivalent housing units from residential housing.
That's cool. Second one is, there's in their documentation, there's a bit of an argument being made about, mostly it's 36 bike parks and 5 car share parks, and but we've got quite a lot of other developments. I mean, I recall the one in Constable Street, which has, as far as I'm aware, no car parks at all, not even car share car parks, etc. Have we given discounts for any of these type of buildings, given that they'll all need to be, they'll all need to have people doing deliveries and services and tradespeople and all that kind of thing as well?
The approach that we've taken to transport is that it's a multimodal approach, and so although people claim that they don't have parking, there's still an impost on the infrastructure that we provide, both in terms of walking,
Mr. Chairman,
safety,
just quickly,
public transport.
Sorry, is it Mr. Hart speaking? Is it
Steve?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So Steve's the council officer, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Thanks. We were quite curious.
I was going. I recognise that voice.
So I was sort of answering it on the transport front.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because we look after the emissions in terms of transport.
Yeah. That was really what I was fishing for there. So thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would there be any other questions? No. Okay, I'll move the paper and reserve my right to speak. I think that's probably appropriate. Yeah, you can. absolutely can. Yeah, Councillor Matthews.
Oh.
I need a seconder, yeah.
I'll second it, Simon.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
Okay, so we have...
Does Liz want to speak?
Oh, sorry, Liz.
Can I reserve my right to speak? Or do you want me to
I
speak
set
now?
that precedent, yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. Ka pai.
And Councillor
Just so we
Matthews.
can hear a bit of the debate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, kia ora koutou. So I've got an amendment which we can probably bring up, which I'm going to move and Councillor O'Neill is going to second. For ease and grace of decision making, we have made my amendment and the foreshadowed amendment from Councillor Condi, the same wording but with just the differences, the amount of the remission. So in my amendment it's 100% remission, and I understand the foreshadowed is 50%. I guess I want to start by saying that this is an exceptional circumstance. New Zealand's first resident-led, not-for-profit co-housing apartment development, and that, as the submitters have said, to get even to this point has been a huge journey with many, many obstacles. I understand that development contributions may not be the best mechanism to support the housing development that we want, by remitting them. However, it is the one that is open to us at this point. And, obviously we need investment in infrastructure, but we also urgently need housing and need innovative solutions such as this, which enable different forms of housing that this council has held up as a standard of great design, great innovation as part of our planning for growth seminars. We've had people from the Urban Habitat Collective speak about what they're doing, and we've really championed this as something we need to see more of. So this is the way that we can support this development. And I guess I'm thinking about, there's a resident in my ward that I talked with who is planning to be moving into this development, and it's a retiring couple who will be selling the family home, and so allowing a family to move where they currently are to live in a more dense way. So it's exactly the sort of development we need more of, and exactly the place everybody seems to agree that we need more housing, and the place where people say they want to drive development actively and not just passively allow it to occur. So this is a way that we can support that and do those things. Basically, I guess the point is, if we want more of this, we do need to support it. And this is the mechanism that we have before us to do so. I'm very interested in other mechanisms, but we currently don't have them. It is not a huge amount of money, and it really does deliver many of our objectives for a small amount of money. And so I urge you to support 100%. And yeah, I'm just interested to hear the debate. I'd like to thank officers for their work, but also I would like to thank the Urban Habitat Collective for their work that's come to this point, and for being innovators in trying to bring new solutions for our housing crisis. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Matthew. I believe that Councillor O'Neill's seconding for you.
Just a question, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, question of the chair. Yeah, Liz.
Just a question. Can the foreshadowed amendment be moved when it's a direct negative to the recommendation on the table? The officer's recommendation that's on the table?
Get officer advice on that.
So the officer advice for this amendment is that it's not a direct negative of the original motion. A direct negative is where voting against the original motion would be the same as the amendment, and that this amendment does not strictly follow from voting against the officer's recommendation. because there are several different options. Well,
The paper actually says that we can do this.
Yeah. I think we've had our officer advice that we can do it. So let's just debate it. Yeah. Councillor O'Neill.
Yep, I'm happy to do my seconder speech now. So there are two options provided in the paper. One is to accept that we will not be granting any development contributions remissions, and the amendment that we are moving today is that we do provide some relief in the terms of development contributions to 100%. We don't always have a solid policy basis to make new decisions, and since the last development contributions policy was written, Wellington's demographic has significantly changed. We have a growing and pressing housing crisis. We have a massive planning opportunity ahead of us, and I just think that this would be a really awesome way to signal to community not only our intention to change the development contributions policy, but that this is in a very exceptional case. This is a pretty awesome and amazing development. It's not a silver bullet, but one useful tool to capture our own community's wishes. I'm really strong here that this should not be precedent setting for any old development, but that it is pretty remarkable and would definitely be a jewel in Aotearoa's stone in terms of how we want to see our housing. Yep.
Thanks, Councillor.
I think I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Foon. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Matthews, for bringing this amendment, and also I do want to shout out to the Urban Habitat Collective. I have been following them since this was a discussion and an idea of a group of people who were trying to make change for the better. I think a lot of what I wanted to say has actually been said, but I am very much in favour of council supporting this 100%. Aside from some of the reasons, just hearing that councils have the lever to pull here, and that councils around the world and even in Hamilton, in the Waikato, see the benefits of supporting this because of the old extra benefits that this brings the city. Agree, this might not be the best mechanism, but it is a way that we can show we support until we maybe get better ways to support on the table. We heard about the benefits of co-housing, how they support our environmental goals, but actually what's really reaching out to me here is our social cohesion goals. And what really spoke to me is the idea of forever houses for people, but what that does to a neighbourhood. It really does build community. And one thing that's been overlooked in this discussion is actually Adelaide Road, which I cycle down every day, has got the potential to go down a safety void. And by having places with forever homes and character and innovative like this, we actually have a chance of building a community in this area. We could say that developers could be influenced, but if we don't have an example to show them, it is very hard for them to be influenced. And I would really like this council to be a partner and a supporter and an enabler for people and communities with new ideas. And this is one way, by remitting the development contributions for this co-housing test case, we show our support for pioneering models that are trying to make change that will actually build on the long-term benefits for our city. So yes, thank you very much and would really love all your support.
Thanks, Councillor Foon. Deputy Mayor Free. Are we all right with that? That's interesting.
You only move and second the foreshadowed amendment.
Once
I didn't hear
if this amendment has failed.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're speaking to the amendment. So you can speak now if you want. Okay.
Yeah, and you can also.
Did you hear him?
Yeah.
Right. This one has actually caused me a little bit of soul searching because I'm very sympathetic to what the Urban Habitat Collective have tried to achieve and are achieving. And I think that they make some really good points, that it's not easy to be at the cutting edge of something new, and that they are providing something innovative, and it's brave, and it does provide a lot of what we want to see. And for that, I think they do deserve some credit. And possibly, you know, they've made the point that we've always been verbally supportive, but what can we do to be supportive in reality? But with that, I've had to actually weigh up to the very real cost of our infrastructure, and the fact that if we did this for everybody, and there will be many other cases that will feel that they are also deserving for whatever reason, that we could end up in a situation where our policy, we're not applying our policy consistently. And so my basic question has been, is this exceptional enough to make an exception to our standard policy? And if it is exceptional, does it deserve 100% remission, or perhaps something that we might give for the Green Star buildings, which is more like 50%? So I've come down to thinking 100% for me actually is too much. I think it does send perhaps for me, it probably puts me a little bit in conflict with those other values of needing to actually pay for things, and other ratepayers need to pay for things if some ratepayers don't pay, which is why I am interested in the foreshadowed amendment. But I do thank you for bringing us to our attention, and Councillor Matthews, and I know Councillor Foon has also spoken to me about it and given me some very compelling reasons to consider it. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor Foster.
Yeah, look, thanks, Councillor Matthews, for raising this. I'm not going to support the amendment. You probably predicted that. It goes against every fiscal fibre in my body. Look, the whole thing about development contributions is that it's a way of growth, new development helping to pay for infrastructure which is required to support that growth. And if you start chipping away at that, what you're starting to do is to say to existing residents, existing businesses who actually don't need that infrastructure, that they should pay for it, because that's effectively what it goes to. Now, I would contemplate reductions in development contributions, which I might point out are already extraordinarily low. I think ours probably are possibly the lowest in the country. I think there is an issue there. I think they're probably too low, because I think there's a real question about a lot of our infrastructure, about whether there is a growth-related component when it's actually been classified as level of service or renewal. So I think that's a piece of work that we actually need to do to get it on top of. But you look back at the DC policy as it's gone out in draft, that ours are sitting in the, most of them, certainly in the citywide area, are in that sort of 3 to 4,000, or 3,925 is the number which is given there. There are other areas where there is addition to that, but Pūroro is 16 to 42,000, Hutt's 15 to 26,000, so we're order of magnitude lower. And Auckland may be thinking, and I know Hamilton, which was mentioned earlier, I think Hamilton's are at least 40, and Auckland, they're contemplating some 100 pluses. So, and that reflects the massive cost of the infrastructure which is required to support growth. Yeah. So basically the question is are existing residents and businesses subsidising new? Because these genuinely are, it's infrastructure required to support growth. And I guess, so my challenge with any of these things is, can you demonstrate that you have a lesser impact on the infrastructure? Now, I know they've made the argument around that there might be a transport reduction because of the nature of the, providing only 5 on-site car parks. I do note that now we cannot require any car parks built in any property. So anybody can do what they want to there. They can choose that. But there are 5 car share car parks. Car share car parks, by definition, are going to get used more than individual car parks. So there will be a use there. I'm actually to some degree surprised they even included that. And 36 bike parks. Well, we all know that we have already budgeted $200 million plus for cycling, so it's not free. And also there's a mention of public transport. We've also, the City Streets program, again, is not free. So, this, and of course then there's all the issues around servicing of the facility, whether it's tradespeople or whatever, the actual construction of it as well. Those all use infrastructure. So to me, they just, I think it's a great innovation, but they just haven't demonstrated for me the reduction in impact on on the infrastructure which is there, which is why I certainly can't support 100%. I'll be interested in listening to the argument around 50, but I think the same the same case needs to be made. The other bit is just, Councillor Foon, you raised the issue about rates remission. If they're eligible for rates remission effectively, I think from memory that's $5,000 over 2 years, which is considerably more than the amount we're talking about here, if you're talking about the number of families which are being talked about, which is 25. That's a pretty significant transfer that's being made there. Look, councillors, I know it's very easy to say, let's give up money that we haven't already got, but the reality is that the better way of doing this, if we were going to be really transparent about it, will be to say no, and we're giving you a grant. And if that stacked up as being the grant that we wanted to give, then go for it. But I just don't think that is. It's just so easy to go, we're not taking that, putting that charge in, but it is a genuine cost to the city. It's not free.
Thanks, Mayor Foster. Liz Kelly.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I wanted to say that I really think that this is an innovative and exciting project. And when we heard Bronwyn and Jessie speak this morning, I became really excited about what they were saying, and particularly because it addressed just how Kiwis use their ingenuity to solve problems. So here we are in a housing crisis where it's really unaffordable for many to own their own homes, and these 25 people have come together and come up with a solution, and I think that's awesome. I also love their model because all the things that they've addressed as you know, the Green Star accreditation, but the age group who will be in this development, everything about it I support, and I think is really exciting. And as they have said, this is the first in New Zealand. Well, the first, it's got to consent process anyway, but I have heard of this in Europe. But I can tell you that there is another project in the Kapiti Coast. It's the He Tangata Village Trust in Kapiti, and they're a group of people who are doing exactly the same thing right now. And that's just by chance that I got an email this morning that they wanted to meet with us as a social housing provider, just to get some other ideas. So I commend Urban Habitat on this development and what they're doing, and I think that that's really exciting. But I don't support a remission of the development contribution, and when I say that, it's probably, I'll put my cards on the table here, is that I think that the council, if we were to go down this track, we leave ourselves wide open for other developments to come in and to ask for a remission as well. And we don't have the money, council doesn't have the money to be able to disregard an opportunity to get a pool of funds. And so what I'm talking about is the development that my organisation is building in Tawa is going to provide 36 properties. It's going to meet the Green Star accreditation. It's going to have green space and all of these things that's in this exciting project. And we would argue, if this was to be passed, that we are an exceptional case as well, because we will be providing 36 new homes to the most vulnerable and disadvantaged people in our city. And so that's why I'm saying I'm putting my cards on the table. If this was to pass, I certainly would be sending my people to come to the councillors, council officers, to look for a remission as well. And I quickly got in touch with our project manager just to see what our contribution is for our project, and our contribution will be based on this isn't confirmed, but just based on what the council website says, our contribution is around 92,000. So combined with our development that we're building in the city and Urban Habitat, that's a pool of 100 and what is it, 60 something, $160 dollars that basically we would be saying, you know, that's okay. Really applaud you for your innovation. We want to encourage housing, and so yes, we'll just let that go. So I'm being honest with you, councillors. If this gets passed, I certainly will be coming in and asking for that. But I am saying that for the sake of the city, I don't believe that it is a good move for us to make this decision today. And I will be supporting the recommendation at point 27. I forget where it is now. I'm trying to run off two screens, but basically it's saying that we don't accept that. What is it? The remission and rates. But I want to put this to councillors to think about as well. And that was why I asked the questions of the officers about what the development contribution is used for. So they made it really clear it's for everything, all the services that we provide to the city. And I think everybody should play a part in paying for that. And I want you to think about Ngāti Toa have announced, their CEO has announced the development at Kenapuru Landing over the next 2 years, where they will be building the properties there. And when they do that work, they are putting in the infrastructure for that development, which will mean that every house that's built there will no longer have to pay an electricity bill because of the science and the scheme that they will be building. Basically, it's going to be that each property's waste is what's going to be generating the electricity for that site. Now, I would put it to you that a development like that would be something that I think needs to be considered by council, where the infrastructure is impacting less. That development infrastructure is a lot less than this project that's here. So while they've said the bikes and all the other things, they are still going to impact on the wastewater, all three waters, on the infrastructure, on the footpaths, on everything. And I just believe that it's not a pathway that this council should go down. I think that we would be opening ourselves up to a precedent where other developers will be able to come in and ask for a remission as well. And sorry, I don't normally talk this long, but this is something that I just think you'll be going down a rabbit hole if we pass this. And if we do, I'll be at the door asking for our remission. Kia ora.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Condi.
Thanks, Liz, and really appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk that through with us. I think, you know, I've also had a kind of a struggle with this, and I think, you know, looking at this, it's clear that this is a development that will be using infrastructure that the DCs are designed to pay for. They are going to be using our transport infrastructure, whether it's through their car share cars on the road, or PT using their buses that use our streets, or their cycles on our cycleways, or their feet on our footpaths. That, you know, they are going to be using all of our transport infrastructure. They are going to be using our water infrastructure, the community services, the green space, all of those things. So, and I do kind of have an issue that as wonderful as this development is, that they do need to pay a share of that. You know, I think that is an important principle. So, you know, I do struggle with the idea of a 100% remission. You know, I also acknowledge the idea that this isn't the right mechanism. I think we've all said that. You know, this doesn't feel like the right mechanism to do that. But I guess, you know, Mayor Foster, you were saying if we want to support this development, let's do it through a grant. But I don't see any actual way that we could do that right now with the systems that we have in place. That's what I'm saying, right? On this case, this is the only way we can do it. Not in this meeting, but I don't see a way forward for a genuine way forward for how that would work. So that's kind of an issue for me, as I don't see that. I think. So I absolutely agree with the officer advice that under the policy there's no grounds to remit. these DCs. But I also think that this is why there is an exceptional circumstances clause in the policy. And that exists for a reason, which is that at times we might face exceptional circumstances that we might want to consider. So then the question is, you said, Deputy Mayor, do you feel like this has come to the equivalent of the exceptional circumstances? I think the fact that this is a resident-led co-housing development, the fact that they've carved a path for others to follow, that this is the first one that's tried to do this in Wellington, and that they're trying to, what I see is not just that they're trying to make this work for themselves, but they're making all of kind of their intellectual capital, if you like, all the knowledge that they've accumulated to put the ladder down so other people can come up after them. It's not just about, for them, it's not just about this development. They've really put a lot of work into making sure that people make it easier for people to follow them in this process. And I guess what I would say, Liz, is that for me, a social housing provider coming and providing housing is awesome. Fantastic social good, but there's lots of social housing providers who have built developments before. We know how to do that. We know what it looks like. For me, this is the first people who have tried to do this, and they have carved a path for others in a way that innovation bears risk and cost, and they've taken that on the behalf of the whole city, essentially, by saying, we're going to try and make this work. Nobody else has done it before, and we'll take the knocks and we'll take the costs and the risk. And then we'll try and make it so that others can follow us. So for me, that's the exceptional circumstances. It's not just that it's a social good and it's a nice development and it's a great project. It's all of those things. But for me, it's the fact that they've had to blaze the trail, and that is hard. And you only blaze the trail once, that people coming afterwards, they have the advantage of the fact that they can kind of follow in those footsteps. So for me, that's where I sit with the exceptional circumstances, and that's why I really like the wording of this, funnily enough, because it's a very narrow ground. So it's specifically saying, because this is a resident-led co-housing project, so it acknowledges that this is the first ever resident-led co-housing project. So I acknowledge, and I worry as well, Liz, about that we're leaving ourselves wide open to other applications, which is why I think the wording is really important, to acknowledge that we're not trying to set a precedent here, and that we do think that this specific development has some specific exceptional circumstances that essentially will not apply ever to any other development. Nothing will ever be the first ever resident-led co-housing project in Wellington again. This will be the only one. So those are all the kind of things that I'm weighing up. And I think, where I've landed is that with the narrow wording, I'm more comfortable with it, but I'm still not comfortable with a 100% remission, because I think they will be using a lot of our infrastructure, and they should pay for some of that. So that's why, as you all know, if this amendment doesn't go through, then I will bring an amendment that has the exact same wording but with a 50% remission, because I think that acknowledges that they do need to make a contribution to our infrastructure, and it makes it well, I can't talk to the foreshadowed amendment until it's tabled, so I'll just stop there, and thanks very much.
Can I just ask a question of the motion? It's probably as the mover, but it says, because what Councillor Conley was saying, it says one of the first ever, because you were saying it is the first, it's the one that's being the ladder and etc. It's either is the first or it isn't the first. So my question is, if we're saying it's the first ever, because if it's one of the first ever, it does open that door a lot wider.
Okay, we can change that to It's
the best of our knowledge, it's the first ever.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, that will be, at least that's nice and that's tighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Pennant.
Thank you. I think this has been an incredibly useful debate, and yeah, so I really appreciate everyone's effort on this. Councillor Matthews, as you know, I did have some concerns around the way this is originally worded, so I've agreed, I want to potentially second Councillor Conley's foreshadowed amendment, because it must be exceptional circumstances. We know we've got a housing crisis and an ecological and a climate crisis, but we have lots of people who are trying to address that, and so we need to be able to argue and have a very publicly defensible position that this is exceptional. Now, this is why, Liz Kelly, your perspective was incredibly useful, because let's call it, this is mainly a Pākehā-led development and it's not affordable. I know that like it's a fantastic project and I really love it, and which is why I do want to remit. But let's just look at also what Māori housing providers are doing, and for people with really, really big needs. And I think what you've done is fantastic. And certainly my philosophical approach compared to the Mayor is that I do believe in giving incentives, because we are in such a serious set of crises, the three I've mentioned, that we need to take urgent action. So when I worked on that DC remission for green buildings, that was, and Mayor Wade Brown and I worked on that together, that was really more about commercial buildings at the point in time, because we knew that we had some really big issues there. I'm not sure how successful it has been, but I think the time has now come when we will see it used a lot. And so I think one of the other arguments why we should pass this at least is that the only reason they're not going down that track is because the Homestar process is so expensive, right? So if they had managed to get certified, they would be eligible for this. And I really do need to talk to the Green Building Council, because this is a bit ridiculous. If it costs that much, you know, to get the certification, they're not doing so well. So I think I am very comfortable with giving some money back and to others. Councillor Condi, with your foreshadowed amendment, I'm not entirely comfortable with saying there's no policy intention to change it, the DC policy, because I certainly do intend to. The only reason I didn't do it before it went out for consultation is I was so exhausted and tied up with the district plan that I just didn't have time.
Councillor Pennant, if I could, just a little point, we're just debating Maker's motion, but I do take that.
Sorry. So that's why, and also, sorry, that is Councillor Matthews' motion as it was originally drafted, at least. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. As it said, there's no intention. Well, absolutely, that's not true. So I just want to be clear about that, and I think there needs to be some
if we could wind this up a wee bit, I think you made the point.
Okay. So I'm nearly finished.
Yeah.
Councillor Wolf, I've done quite a lot of work on this. I did try to get to a good position. So I think what I think we urgently need to do is to sort this policy out. So I think it's fine to make some exceptions, but we do need to sort out the policy and not have another rewrite of the policy. We need to get it more right now rather than in a couple of years' time, because the final point is this project looked really innovative maybe a couple of years ago, but the floodgates will open now, and really, really innovative, lots and lots of innovative projects are going to come through because people want them. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillor Pennant. We've got Liz.
I signalled.
You did.
Sorry,
Sue.
just a procedural point to move the motion, given we have had 3 speakers against, and that still means that right of reply can happen. But yeah.
I'm sorry, Liz. We will move that way because that's within our standing orders.
You can still vote against if you would like to.
So we're voting on the procedural motion to put the amendment.
Could you just put that on the screen, Councillor Wolf? Is that okay?
Yeah, if we can.
Thank you.
So I can. Is there anybody?
Can you just clarify what we're doing, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, we've got a procedural motion on the table. Yeah, it's emailed but can't be on the screen. If we could just take a little adjournment, I think that would be wise.
So
her right of reply.
Oh, look, I understand we're under time pressure. I think we've canvassed all of the arguments really well. And Councillor Condi said many of the things that I would say in a right of reply. I do think the grant argument is a bit of a straw man. I'm on the grants committee. It wouldn't meet the criteria of any of the grants that we have. But if both of these motions are to fail, Mayor, I invite you to do a grant from your mayoral fund or something like that.
Consider it alongside all the priorities that will be for council funds.
Yes, and I just want to thank everybody for the constructive debate. I understand this isn't the greatest mechanism that we have, and also that we are all highly supportive of this project. So, yes, thank you.
And we'll put the amendment in the usual way.
Okay, and can we take a division on both of these?
Sure.
Are we voting now?
We are.
Oh, on the amendment?
Yep.
Oh.
And can we take
voting on
green for yes and red for no?
Sorry, Councillor Wolf, can we take them separately? Because I'm happy to support one and not the other. Sorry.
Sorry.
I don't even know what we're voting on.
Yeah, sorry.
If this fails, we have a foreshadowed amendment on the table.
I think, Councillor Wolf, the suggestion is that we actually take 2 and 3 separately, because 3 is almost a statement of fact.
Okay.
And one that's going in the other one. And sorry, we've just had Rebecca sent to us, so sorry. I was just make sure I understood.
Now voting on 2, which is about the 100% remission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much, all.
Beautiful.
Cut to the chase.
Right, I got it. Thank you.
So that
there is some fiscal prudence still around the table.
I used to love regs.
So do we?
So that fails, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, we have to vote on 3.
3 now?
So 3 now.
Oh, thanks.
Is currently consulting on new development.
Who have we got waiting? We've still got a few councillors waiting for this vote. Is it Liz and
Hang on, I haven't changed mine. Yeah, I support that. New contribution.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. That was carried unanimously. Now,
Yes, we do love one of your amendments.
so Councillor Condi, do you wish to foreshadow your amendment now?
Well, yes, so I will now put my amendment on the table, which is identical in wording to the one that we've just had, except that it's granting a 50% remission for the proposed development. For all the reasons that we've already discussed, I don't want to go into them again, but I do want to acknowledge that it is possible that they might be eligible for the Green Star remission, which would be 50%. So that's kind of why it's equivalent to that. I mean, we don't know for sure that they would be eligible for that because the certification was so expensive they didn't pursue that. But it's possible that they might have been eligible for it if the certification had been cheaper. And so I think I just chose the 50% number because that we already have that Green Star policy there, and so I just used that as a guideline, essentially. But this is just a compromise position to say this way they do have to contribute towards the infrastructure that they are going to use, but acknowledges that this is the first ever resident-led co-housing project, that they've really had to blaze the trail for the city and do a lot of work that hasn't happened before. I don't think I need to say more than that. And Deputy Mayor Free is going to second.
I'm very happy to second. I think for me, this does come down also to dollars, and this isn't a very big amount. So I think the full amount's 57,000, so the amount we'd be remitting would be something like that. So it's less than $30,000, and I did listen to Councillor Matthews' arguments that, we spend a lot of money sometimes on reports and pilots, and I think in a way I'm regarding this as an investment in a demonstration project that is quite cutting edge for where it's located. And I think Councillor Foon also made some really good points about safety, about the fact that we do want to lead on actually getting some residents here. This does show the way. It is a very much a community development, and in some ways we do pay also for community infrastructure, and they're providing that kind of thing within the development with communal kitchens and that kind of communal vibe. So I think Yes, it does run the risk of opening the floodgates, and I think we need to manage that. But I think for me, it is about that leading edge, really innovative, and the amount being sort of a constrained amount. If it was 50% of 100,000 or 200,000, it might be a different matter. So I think on balance, I will be supporting this.
Does anybody else wish to speak? I'll say I was very split on. Oh, sorry. Do we have? Oh, Councillor Pannett, you go.
Oh, you go if you want
Okay,
first.
I'll go. Thanks, Councillor Pannett. I think I haven't spoken. I'm still split on this. I think that obviously there's a gap in our policy, and we're sort of creating a little bit of a policy thing going on here. I'm really sympathetic to the project and what they will achieve. I think the pioneering bit is fantastic. I've very much appreciated the debate and particularly Liz, your perspective to this. Yeah, I'm still split, so I'm still looking forward to hearing a little bit more. Might be, but I won't be because Councillor Pannett's next.
Well, hopefully I can help, Councillor Wolf. So look, I think Mayor Foster, I love your fiscal prudence, but I think we just have to not get too caught up on exactly every cent, because actually what we need is people well housed in green buildings that respond to the 3 crises that I talked about. That is actually the most important thing. And then we get all these enormous benefits from that. So I'm very happy to support this. I think it's a good compromise. And Councillor Condé, I did send you a message. Can I just ask that you include the wording that it also does meet some of our critical environmental goals as well, because yes, it is about the housing crisis, but we've also got a global crisis on our hands as well, and it would just be helpful just to show how clearly this project meets some of those policies. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillor Pannett. Liz, Kelly.
Yep. Kia ora. I will not be supporting this this motion because for me, at the end of the day, this is still 25 people. Is it 25 people? It is, isn't it? These are homeowners who are building their own home, and if they were doing that individually on their own quarter acre, they would have to pay the contribution, the development contribution. So while I don't want to sound too hard and harsh, because I do applaud them for coming together and finding a way that they can all own their own home, at the end of the day, they are still homeowners that if they were building on their own land, which this is theirs, but their own quarter acre, they would still have to pay the development contribution. So I won't be supporting this. But what I do, and I should have asked them or the officers or somebody, but it's really just evolved as the debate has developed, is that why have they, or why don't they apply to the Ministry of Housing for funding, for capability funding or funding to cover this cost? Because they are really sympathetic to any innovative ideas, because people who are building houses are helping resolve the housing crisis that we have right now. And there is a lot of flexibility for an opportunity for funding within the ministry right now. Like they have got a budget of, I forget how many hundreds of million that they just recently announced. So what I'm saying is, why does it have to be City Council who are wearing the cost of helping, supporting these people with their innovative idea? Why can't it be central government and the wider taxpayer supporting this innovative idea? Because then if this was going to happen again, which I'm sure it will once there's other people out there who hear this, and I take your comments, I forget which one it was, but who said this, they were blazing the way. I think that this will happen again. And so this should be something that central government is encouraging. But I would like to see them or central government come to the party to support this sort of innovation, not local government. It's always local government and the ratepayers that are having to pay and wear the cost. And so I won't be supporting this and essentially it's because they're still owning their own homes, and if they were building them separately, they'd have to pay that contribution. Kia ora.
Councillor O'Neill. Thank you, Liz. I knew there would be some interesting. I just knew.
Kia ora. I just briefly wanted to talk in support of this amendment, and I'd like to thank Councillor Condi and is it you, Deputy, for seconding? Yeah. And Iona for all of your work in this area. This development, it's stated in a couple of emails, aggressively supports Wellington City Council's aims to densify our city, as we will have all experienced a very long 6-hour debate on the spatial plan, that Adelaide Road is something that is tipped for higher density housing, and this, I think, is pretty much the best example we've currently seen in Wellington City. So I am really comfortable in this circumstance, really making a strong statement that this does agree with Council's future strategic priorities, although it does not line up with our out-of-date DC policy. I'm particularly quite excited to see more of these developments. And Liz, I take your point, and I've also heard about this awesome development in Kenepuru, and I'm sure if more what were the key words? People-led, non-for-profit, co-housing options with water-sensitive urban design and green space, that we would welcome a scheme that sought to respond to a lot of those things. And I'm sure if you've got some developments as well, then we would happily look into those, because I think this is an awesome step for our city. I'm a little bit disappointed that 100% did not pass, but 50% is half as good. So with that, I'll leave it to the rest of the committee, and I would also just like to signal we're coming up to lunch.
Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor Condi, you're... Sure.
Yeah, look, I was wrestling a little bit with whether 50% was reasonable, not reasonable. I guess the bit that would persuade me is if I could see, I'm just trying to find the Green Star rating and how the Green Star rating will work, and whether this would actually be a Green Star building or likely to be a Green Star building or not, because I think that will give this amendment a leg in. But I've got to say they're not the most penetrable of websites to try and find something about Green Star and what tells me that they exist, but not actually what the things are that would actually get them across the line. Look, there's a couple of things that I just did want to say, because they've come up in the debate here. Densification, absolutely, but that applies to all kinds of development. In fact, the bulk of our development in the city will be in that context of encouraging densification. That's what we've been trying to do for several decades, and have done that really, really well. But that doesn't mean that we have given people discounts off their development contributions accordingly. And it's not about whether the building's happening or not. It's happening. It's about whether there is $2,000 per unit approximately paid or not towards the infrastructure of the city. And there's also a comment being made, I think, Deputy Mayor, you made the comment about communal facilities, but these are communal facilities, as I understand it, within the development, not for the wider community, and that goes to both the outdoor space, which effectively is the garden. Look, we've got gardens, but that doesn't mean they're communal spaces. They're there, they're green, but they're not there available for the wider community, and I don't think this will be either, and I'm sure that the kitchens won't be. So I think we're trying to sort of interpolate two things and put them together. I am concerned about the floodgate argument, because while this does say it's the first ever, and I think that's tighter, I just would ask you just think to yourselves what you do with the second one, the third one, the fourth one. If we're starting to go down that track, then you've got to change the budget number we put in the LTP. If you go down to change the budget number we put in the LTP, it also affects our debt ceiling, which is paying for the infrastructure that we need. Mm-hmm. So there are some challenges there. And finally, I think Councillor O'Neill, you did say it was an out-of-date DC policy. We've just gone out for consultation in it. Yeah. I will feel much more comfortable if we actually go, right, this is what we actually want to have in there, and we've got a coherent way of dealing with these things, then we actually do these things on the relatively ad hoc basis, which is unfortunately what we're doing at the moment.
Councillor Condi, go for it.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, we're tight for time.
Yep,
Just to let you know.
So, quickly to respond to the question about Green Star and Homestar, we did have some of that debate during questions and when they were speaking, and I did look on the website last night to try and find it, and as I understand it, our remission for Green Star kicks in if you get Green Star level 5, and then I was trying to see was that comparable to Homestar, because they are looking at Homestar, which is, I guess, because it's cheaper. It looked like maybe it was equivalent to Homestar 8. The fact that Green Star is so expensive to register for, I think that's definitely something we need to tidy up in the DC policy, and I think when it comes back we should definitely have a conversation about how that works. But we can't solve that issue today, right now. So all we can say is that they might be eligible for Green Star, and we don't know. That's all I'm saying at this point. Councillor Pannett, I think we've softened this wording to acknowledge that you may pursue changes to the DC policy, but that this decision doesn't imply any intention to. This is not a committee of the whole, and we can't bind others to do that. So I think that was how we tried to address that concern. I acknowledge your concerns about wanting to talk about the environmental goals and the climate crisis, but again, because of my concerns about trying to keep it as narrow as possible, I'm not going to add those words in, because I think it does just provide another hook for people to come back to us in future. So I'm going to be leaving the wording as it is, which I think is nice and narrow. So we've spoken to that in debate, and I think we can all acknowledge that that's a good thing about this project. Quickly, just want to say that I agree. I think this isn't the most elegant way to be doing this, but I do kind of agree with the idea that at less than $30,000, this does feel a little bit like a grant for a pilot project. And we shouldn't be doing it this way, but this is the only way that we can do it. I think it would be, I would in future much rather consider other mechanisms to do that, and I wonder if maybe a budget bit in the annual plan might be the way to resolve this, looking at a grant, creating a grant fund for these kind of innovating housing solutions, in the way that the BIF currently operates to protect heritage, for example. But we don't have that right now today. And so right now today, this is what we can do, and I just think that this is a pragmatic compromise that I hope you'll support. Thanks.
So we can put this, and we've just got we got everything up on the, yep. So green for yes, and Liz. Yeah.
We're only voting for 2 at the moment, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we can now genuinely say council's a partner.
Yeah. Okay. So we're on to the substantive. Shall we just go for it? Yeah, but nobody wants to speak. We'll put the substantive. All those in favour? And yeah, we have. Oh, we haven't. The officers aren't prepared for us that quickly. Okay, we move on. Yeah, thank you. Sarah Jane, would you like to? Where is she? Is she online?
Yeah,
she's online.
Hi.
If you could just prepare us for the proposed road stopping and move that for us. Thank you.
So this is a proposal for a road stopping at 3 Short Street in Vogeltown. The owner would like, or council was willing to support a stopping of 40 square metres adjoining the property. And in exchange for that road stopping, we are proposing to acquire approximately 3 square metres of the frontage of 3 Short Street as our footpath encroaches into their private property. We would find out at survey exactly how much land that is going to be, but we are proposing to basically bring their front boundary back to where their fence already exists. Yeah, and essentially there will be sort of a discount on the road stopping land based on how much land we're acquiring. So we'll swap.
Thank you. Nothing contentious, is there?
No, not really.
Okay. Anybody wish to speak? No. Okay. Oh, Councillor Condi.
Just to say, it's fantastic that we're going to be bringing a little bit of footpath back into public ownership. That's always great when we've got a bit of footpath there that we don't actually own, to be able to do that. So great to see.
Yep. So let's. Who's moving? You're a mover. I'll second. Yeah. No other conversation. All in favour with the green and. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Is Maria?
It's always good when the paper's so clear that we don't need to debate.
Is Terry vote? And Mia's not here.
Yeah, Maria's here.
Good on you, Maria. Nothing contentious here. You're happy to move.
So I'm bringing Cuba Duva, Island Bay Festival, and Newtown Festival, and the first time Newtown Festival have actually got a postponement date for April, and they've aligned that along with the Martinborough Fair, because a lot of their stall holders come from Martinborough Fair, then just hop into the Newtown Festival. And then of course there's the domestic cricket at the Basin Reserve starting in December.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, and thank you for your work. I'm happy to move this. Do I have a seconder? No. Deputy Mayor Free, I'm quite happy with this as it is. Let's just put it to the vote. And thank you for your work again, Maria. So all in favour, green.
And let's just hope all these can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go, Maria. You.
So just a heads up, the Polish market in November and December have been cancelled due to them not fitting into the government new traffic light system, but they're looking at February. So they don't have time to get their stuff organised before the December reg, so they'll be bringing it to the first meeting next year in 8th of February.
Thanks, Maria.
For approval.
Thank you very much. So we'll vote on this now. We voted. We did it. We did. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Liam. The last two, we could probably just do them together in block, if that's all right. If you could just. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up that time.
Yes, so the last two, Mr. Chairman, are just the forward work program and the action tracking, and taken as read.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Probably not. Okay, I'll second.
Yeah, just to quickly say that, of course, we've decided to move one of our papers into the forward program, so it'll appear in the future, but isn't there yet.
Yeah, so we're voting on both the action and the forward planning. So those in favour, those against. We're all good. Thank you. So that brings us to. Oh, I thought I did. I pushed the button. I seriously pushed the button. Just before Councillor O'Neill reads the karakia, I'd just like to thank Officer Poloko, Officer Johnson, and all the officers. Liam, thank you. I'm expecting a text from former councillor Sparrow any minute to say, how the hell did we go over 12 o'clock? He never managed to do that. So I'm ashamed of myself. And just to let you know that Councillor O'Neill will be chairing the next meeting. It was decided before this.
And also, I bring Sparrow greetings and tweets from our former councillor.
And I'd also like to thank the public submitters. This was a very informative session of the Regulatory Processes Committee. So, yeah, thank you one and all. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Councillor and Chairperson Wolf. I'm just going to read the karakia. Anuhia, 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 ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua. e te ara takatū. Koe rā e rongo whakaria ake ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā kua wātea.